So for a lot of you longtime subscribers, you probably recognize this reel, but for all you newer subscribers, this is the Hibo Steed. And this reel, at least on paper, had the potential to be the biggest bait finesse bargain of all time. And I'm not just talking, AliExpress Chinese reels. I'm talking even compared with, the JDM, Shimano's, Abus, and Daiwas as well. And the reason being is that this reel has an aluminum frame. It's really light. I think it's only about 6.3 ounces. And it's really small and compact, really comfortable to palm. And as you can see, it's got a really, really beautiful, super shallow, super ported, and also super lightweight spool. Now I believe this spool weighs about 8.5 grams. So that makes this spool even lighter than Shimano's Scorpion BFS. Now what made this potentially the biggest bait finesse bargain of all time was the price for all this. Now, to get something comparable to this as far as frame material and spool weight and palmability from Japan, you'd be looking to spend at least $250. But this reel can be bought off AliExpress all day long for under $60. So on paper, this thing has all the makings of being the ultimate budget bait finesse reel. But any talk of this thing being the ultimate budget bait finesse reel is immediately dismissed once you actually take it out fishing. And let me show you the reason why. The reason why are these extremely weak magnetic brakes. And if you take a look at this brake assembly and you see how many magnets are actually there, you're probably thinking to yourself, how in the hell are all those magnets too weak to slow down this lightweight spool? And I don't know. I guess magnets have different strengths and they put some cheap weak magnets in this reel. So yeah, with that being said, in order to make this reel even halfway fishable, in my opinion, you had to turn the external adjustment all the way up to the maximum. And then you had to tighten this spool tension down so tight that when you press the thumb bar, the lure doesn't even move. And even then, you could only cast sidearm and it would still blow up about half the time. And don't even get me started on overhead casting. This thing does not like to overhead cast with these weak brakes. It's kind of made me realize that I took for granted, the mainstream manufacturers and their excellently designed braking systems. Now, I never have bought a reel and thought to myself, will these brakes be strong enough, until I bought this reel right here. So even with these weak brakes, the Hibo Steed with its super light spool still managed to pretty much equal the former budget bait finesse king, the Soronoy XF50, in cast distance when it came to bait finesse weight lures. But there's a new king in town, the Fishband GH100, and this thing is legit. It casts super lightweight lures really far. The brakes are almost too strong. And this thing is revelation, and it costs pretty much the same price as the Hibo Steed. So that pretty much made the Hibo Steed completely obsolete in my opinion. But I didn't want to give up on this super sweet looking spool right here. So basically I just let the Hibo Steed sit around, and I kind of formulated a plan for this thing. And that plan was to buy a Ardent reel, because Ardent uses, some of their reels use the same frame and body, and put this spool in an Ardent reel. But then again, that meant that I would have to spend the money on an Ardent reel, and I wasn't quite ready to do that yet. So it's just been sitting around ever since I bought it, up until a few months ago when I was browsing around on AliExpress like I do a lot, and I came across this thing right here. This is a magnetic brake kit. Now this is made for the Haibo Steed, but it's not made for this steed. It's made for the white Haibo Steed that actually has centrifugal brakes. So they want you to convert your white Haibo Steed to magnetic, and you buy this kit to do that. And this kit was only, I think, $8 or $9. So of course I immediately ordered it, hoping that this thing would make this Haibo Steed into a fishable bait finesse contender. So let me show you what you get in the kit. Now you get a new bank of magnets. Now hopefully these are stronger than the ones that are already in there. You get this spacer. It's made of plastic. And then you get this metal piece that I guess you glue onto the spool, which the magnets act against. So yeah, basically that's it. Now I have no need for this piece right here. Now I may have need for this piece, but I definitely will have need for this. Okay, so I've devised a little impromptu test here to see which bank of magnets is actually going to be stronger. But first of all, one thing you can do instead of replacing these magnets is I think you can just plop these magnets on top, and that means that you get, I guess, a closer field right here to the spool. So let me try that out. See if this thing fits. Okay, so far so good, but let's see if we can make any kind of adjustments. So I'm turning the brakes up, still spinning. Okay, so right there you can hear the metal grinding against the magnets. So basically you have a very limited brake range here, but that might be all you need. But first of all, I'm going to see if we can just use the magnets on their own. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to see which bank of magnets is stronger by seeing how hard it takes to pull this screwdriver away from them. Okay, so here's the new magnets. Oh crap, I pulled some magnets off. Alright. Okay, so here's the new magnet. Okay, that took a little bit of effort there. Okay, so here's the Haibo Steed magnets. Okay, it takes more effort to pull off the screwdriver, and it looks like I just yanked off all the magnets for the Steed, at least almost all of them, on that one bank. So I'm not too sure that this magnetic brake kit is gonna be any kind of benefit to the Haibo Steed. But of course, there's one way to find out, as to take it out in the water. And I'm gonna bring the screwdriver with me, so I'm gonna do an on the water change to see if we can see a difference and see if we can make this Steed fishable. So see you out on the water. Okay, so we're out here to see if this magnet kit will actually make the Haibo Steed worth a damn. So I have the stock magnets in right now, and it's been a while since I've actually casted the Steed. So I'm gonna get myself reacquainted with its characteristics. I have it paired up with probably the best rod possible for this test, the Ace Hawk CU Double. And I got 4-pound mono. And I'm going to use a relatively heavy 3.2 gram lure. And I'm going to cast around for a couple of minutes, see if what I remember is correct about the casting on the Steed. And then we're going to attach the magnets and see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to turn the magnets all the way up. Now with the Steed, if you recall in my previous videos, the settings are kind of weird on the Steed. When you think you're turning the brakes up, you're actually turning them down. So, okay, so I have the magnets extended out to the maximum position. Spool tension set to just minimize the side-to-side play. And let's see what happens. Okay, distance was okay, but as you can see, on the maximum brake setting, there was an overrun. And it would have been really, really bad if I would have cast it out there like I normally do. I kind of just gave it a half-hearted lob. This was a deep overrun, and this is with spool tension set to minimize the side-to-side play, and the magnetic brakes turned all the way up. So that's pretty sad. With the other two reels, the GH100, the Soronoi XF50, with the magnets turned all the way up, the brakes were so strong they would jerk your lure off to the left. Okay, so let's see an overhead cast. Now this was the weakness of the Steed, in my opinion. Could not do an overhead cast no matter what you did. Yep, overrun. Okay, so the Steed casts exactly how I remembered. So I'm going to tighten up the spool tension now to where when the lure hits the ground, there's only a couple of loops. Okay, so the lure hit the ground and there were no loops at all. Okay, let's see if it can handle it now. Nope, still can't handle it. That is pathetic. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap these stock magnets out with these other magnets that came in the magnet kit. Even though they didn't feel any stronger, I'm going to see what they do. Okay, so the magnet kit magnets are installed, and it looks to me like they stick out a tad bit further than the stock magnets. So hopefully that will make all the difference that we need to make this Steed a fishable reel. Okay, let's try it out. So I'm going to loosen the spool tension and then tighten it up to just minimize that side-to-side play once again. Let's see what happens. Let's cross our fingers. Okay, wow, all right. That was much better. Much, much better. So that seemed to have done the trick. Now, of course, this is the maximum brake setting, but it's going out there probably like 40, 45 foot. And I'm really whipping it out there now. And the spool is super controlled. Okay. So moment of truth, let's see if we can do an overhead cast. Awesome. Okay, so apparently the magnet brake kit works, and that's pretty awesome. Now, to be honest, I didn't think it would work because the magnets felt a little weaker back at home when trying to pull that screwdriver away, but I guess there are different types of magnets, so I can just sling this out there, and that's going out there about a good at least 50 foot. So what we're going to do now is we're going to slowly back these brakes down and see how low we can go. So I backed it down 3 clicks. Okay, had a little bit of a fluff up there, but the lure went out there probably 20 yards. Okay, let's do an overhead. Okay, so there was a fluff up, as you can see, overrun in the middle of the cast. Not quite as bad as the other magnets. And the lure went out there a good almost 20 yards. Okay, I'm gonna back the brakes down 1 click, see if that solves the issue. And I totally forgot about the thumb bar problem with this Steed. Okay, so I managed to reattach the thumb bar, and let's see what happens. Okay, so that cured the overrun problem with the sidearm cast. And let's try overhead. Okay, so going down 1 click definitely cured the overrun. Now here's the problem. I don't think it's going quite as far as the other 2 reels with this same lure. But it's definitely a lot more fishable. So that means you can actually fish this thing now like a normal bait finesse reel, not have to worry about that spool blowing up. You can fish it with looser spool tension. Shit, I shouldn't have cast it there. You can cast as hard as you normally cast without having to feather the spool. Okay, so now that we know that the Steed can now comfortably cast a 1/8 ounce lure, here's the true test with the 1/16 ounce lure. So I'm going to turn these brakes all the way up. Hopefully the thumb bar will not break off again. Okay, that is much, much better. Now the other Steed, it could handle a 1/16 ounce, but you really have to tighten down the spool tension. Now with these new magnets, you can keep the spool tension loose and you don't have to worry about the spool blowing up. So let's try to back these brakes down. I went down 2 clicks. Okay, distance went up probably about 5 to 8 feet. Spool still controlled. Okay, let's do an overhead, see if it can do an overhead with a 1/16. Okay, much, much better. You can actually do an overhead with a 1/16 ounce lure. All right, let's do one more. All right, so that's going out there probably a good almost 20 yards with this 1/16 ounce lure right here. Okay, one more cast with the 1/16 ounce lure, and I think this magnet kit is a success. Okay, so the overall distance has went up a little bit, which is good. But the best part about this magnet kit is the peace of mind. It allows you to just fish like you would normally fish without having to worry about the spool or worry about having to pick out a blow up every other cast, which is what it was for me fishing the stock Hibo Steed with the stock magnets. So the distance I'm getting with this little 1/16 ounce lure is definitely bait finesse worthy and definitely worth using if you're a
creek fisherman. All right, so let's get home and I'm gonna go over my final thoughts about this Hibo Steed now. But before I go home, I'm actually gonna do some real fishing with the Hibo Steed's rival, the Fishband GH100, mounted on the Shimano Sensolite.
Okay guys, so back from the water, and as you can see by the video that by swapping out the stock magnets in the Hibo Steed to the ones that came in this brake kit, the Hibo Steed went from being a useless piece of crap into a totally legit bait finesse reel. Now I'm not sure how they did it, because I could swear that these magnets felt weaker than the stock magnets, but the results are what's important. And the results are that I was able to accomplish several goals with the Steed now that the brakes are under control. Now the first goal was fishability, meaning I could cast consistently without blowing the spool up. Now with the previous brakes, you had to feather the spool and they would still blow up half the time. Now the second goal was to be able to cast overhead, and for me that means better accuracy, and the previous brakes you definitely could not do that. And then the third goal was to be able to cast as hard as I wanted to increase distance without blowing the spool up, and that was accomplished as well. And there was a small little fourth goal, that was the ability to loosen up the spool tension to where the lateral movement is just minimized. And that's really important when it comes to casting light lures, especially bait finesse light lures. So now that the brakes on the Hibo Steed are mostly fixed, how does this reel compare against its two main rivals, the Fishband GH100 and the Swornoy XF50? So as far as casting goes, I'm going to give the edge to the Steed over the XF50 when the XF50 has a spool full of line, and especially when it comes to that 16th ounce lure. I think the Steed handled it really easy, and it probably cast it farther than the XF50. Now I still don't think it casts as good as the GH100, but I'd have to take him out on the field and do a cast battle, but I'm not going to do that, and I'll tell you why later. Okay, so casting aside, let's talk about some of the negatives, and there was only really two. Now the first negative is that while the brakes are pretty much fixed, they're still not nearly as strong as its rivals, in the fact that the lowest I could go was I think like 3 clicks out from the maximum setting before the spool would start blowing up, but still that was enough. And also the fact that the cost of the magnet kit, in addition to the reel itself, puts this Steed in a price category above its two rivals. So I believe the GH100 is still around 59 bucks, while the XF50, people have said you can get them for about 48 bucks, but I've only seen them for like 57. So it makes it a little bit more expensive than its two rivals. So that being said, I would only recommend the Steed to anyone who, you know, has to have an aluminum frame. So that's the one major advantage this has over its rivals, is the aluminum frame, and that it's much smaller and more comfortable to palm, particularly against that GH100. So anyone out there who has a Steed and you want to tame those brakes, then I definitely recommend spending the 7 or 8 or 9 bucks for the magnet kit. And in fact, I think I left the stock magnets out at the water. Oh well, they were useless anyway. But yeah, it's definitely worth the upgrade. It'll totally transform this reel. But does that mean that I'm going to use this reel to go bait finesse fishing now? And the answer is hell no. And that's because of this thumb bar. As you can see, it came off out on the water. And I'm not going to risk it coming off completely and me not being able to fix it out on the water. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out these magnets and give them to my cousin the next time I see him, so he can use them in his Hibo Steed. And what's funny is that he's been using his Hibo Steed like literally almost every weekend, and sometimes on the weekdays going fishing, and his thumb bar is fine. So it looks like I just got a bad reel. So if Hibo is watching this video and you want to send me a free reel to make up for this shitty thumb bar that keeps coming off, then shoot me an email. And hopefully they'll also take the hint and include stronger magnets in their future releases on this reel. There you go, guys. Hibo Steed fixed, and thanks a lot.